Hey everybody, hello for the second time today in my Great Bead Extravaganza takeover. Here, I thought I'd do some bonus broadcasts because it's fun and it's Wednesday and it's our takeover day. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the backstory of the Great Bead Extravaganza before I get into this project that I've got right in front of me. So, the Great Bead Extravaganza, obviously, you guys know about it if you're here, but if you don't, if you're watching us on some different social, on beadshop.com social, and just by way of introduction, I'm Kate Richberg, and welcome. It's great to have all of you all here. The Great Bead Extravaganza was the brainchild of Andrew Thornton and Sarah Ayler. Andrew Thornton of Allegory Gallery and Sarah Ayler of Softlex, and they were chatting one day during the pandemic. So it's been over a year, almost a year and a half now that we've been going. And they decided to invite some of their industry friends, right? And we were going to, it's kind of like babes in arms. We're going to put on a little show. I've got a trunk of costumes. Hey, I've got an old barn, right? And it was going to be kind of a one-time dealio where we all got together. We did some demos over the weekend through the medium of Facebook Live. And we hoped that people would show up, right? Well, lo and behold, I don't know, thousands and thousands of you later, that first event was really fun. I think that we were all feeling kind of the isolation of deep pandemic times, and it was really great to not only communicate and be with my peers in this industry, but also to be able to communicate with you all directly via this platform of social media. So it was such a great success that we decided, hey, let's do it again and again and again. So what has grown out of this great extravaganza is that about 4 times a year, we put on a quote unquote show here virtually for you. You can find it on our Great Bead Extravaganza Facebook page as well as the group. And many of us who are members of the Bead Extravaganza also post it on our home social media. So I wanted to share some of our social media here. And I also wanted to talk about how I wear two hats here in the Great Bead Extravaganza. So first of all, let's take a look at our social for beadshop.com. So as you know, on Wednesdays and Fridays, you can find me broadcasting live at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. You can do the math for all of those other great time zones. But on 10:30 a.m. Pacific time on Wednesdays and Fridays, you can find me broadcasting on the beadshop.com page group. There's a lot of different outlets where I am. You can also jump on to our newsletter and grab our newsletter, and it will tell you about when I'm going live. So just jump over to beadshop.com. You can follow us, though, on our social at beadshop.com. On Insta. The Bead Table is our Facebook group, and jump on over and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're watching this on replay or watching this live, we really, really appreciate that. And then you can find me personally wearing my other hat many times. You can find me on my metalsmithing social media, right? You can find me at BeadKate on Instagram. You can like and subscribe at Kate Richburg on YouTube. And I have a jewelry group, Create with Kate Richburg, and my business page, Kate Richburg Jewelry Educator. And you see my websites below, the informational, katerichburg.com and katerichburgjewelry.com for a bunch of my finished jewelry, etc. So it's all there. Okay, let me go back here to Bead Shop and let me take that off and let me I'm my own production assistant. There we go. Here I am. So that's where I am. You can find me here. Now, you can also, there are many, let me jump over and put this slide up. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. There's a plane flying over. My window's open. Let me close that window and I'll show you this, our spring fling event for you. The Great Bead Extravaganza is coming up. That our preview night is April 8th and our show dates are April 9th and 10th. And you can find this information right in the pinned featured information on our Great Bead Extravaganza group and page. And you can see the fine company I'm keeping, all of these wonderful friends that I've known for really years and years here. You can also go right to our website. It's thegreatbeadextravaganza.com. I also wanted to give a shout out to all of my fellow creators. You know, a lot of us have YouTube channels and groups. So if you can take a screenshot here, or you can go to the group and grab this graphic yourself. If you go to everybody's website, you'll see the different places where people share their content. I wanted to give a shout out to our buddy Andrew, one of the founders of the Great Bead Extravaganza. He did a shout out yesterday for people to jump over to YouTube and follow his YouTube channel. They want to hit that 1,000 subscriber mark, because once you get more and more subscribers with YouTube, a whole bunch of tools open up to you and they're super close. So don't forget, even if you just follow like our Great Bead Extravaganza social, do a little bit of a deeper dive and go into each of those websites for all of these presenters, and you'll find a wealth of information. And we sure do appreciate when you do follow us on our own personal social media as well. Okay, I see that Janice is over on YouTube, giving us a watch over on YouTube. I hope that you guys enjoyed our presentation earlier. You know, I was mentioning with Janice that beadshop.com is celebrating their 40th year in business. And, you know, the wealth of information that we share over on the Great Bead Extravaganza, if you think about all of these great presenters that are sharing their expertise, you literally have hundreds of years worth of expertise right at your fingertips. In the Facebook group, the Great Bead Extravaganza group, you can access all the videos from the past extravaganzas. And again, there are literally hundreds of hours of free instruction. For instance, if you go over like to our YouTube channel for beadshop.com or my personal YouTube channel at Kate Richburg, you will get another couple hundred hours of free instruction. So, you know, I'm super stoked when people share the knowledge and teach, right? Teaching is in my blood, and I have been teaching jewelry design since 1992. And I really commend all of my fellow YouTube and social media content creators when you create your videos and your how-tos. Doing this live like this, me right here, you guys out there, isn't for the faint of heart, right? And you have seen me stumble and fall and get back up and, you know, not be afraid. So, you know, so a big shout out and a big kudos and congratulations to all of our fellow companies on this, because again, like I always say, without you guys out there supporting our small businesses, and many times it's just a few women, a few men, who are out there running their own show. So we really, really appreciate that support. Also, and I'm going to say this for me personally, and I know I speak for beadshop.com as well. I think it's really important that when I want you to take this knowledge and I want you to run with it, right? Um, I think it's really important to watch a whole bunch of tutorials online and gather all of the information that you can, and then kind of ingest that, digest it, right? And create your own wonderful works. I watch some tutorials and things like that, and I really try and credit just the wonderful inspiration that I get from my peers here in this industry. But we put this content out for you guys so you guys can grab that content and run with it, right? And start your own creative journey. Wherever you are on your creative journey, from very, very beginning right here to maybe a more seasoned designer down the road here, it all has value and it's all super valid. What I do here on this live platform with you and I makes it look very easy because, again, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. That's crazy to think of it. So, but don't, you're on your own journey. So you decide what techniques work for you, you decide what tutorials work for you, and you decide your own jewelry style. You march to the tune of your own drum. That's what I'm here to say. All right. So that's your pep talk for now. So, all right. Shall we take a look at the project I'm going to do today? So, or the second project. If you didn't see our first broadcast, Janice and I were on together, and you'll want to check that out. So let me show you this. Let me pull this back down. Oh, my glasses are sitting right there as well. So let's straighten everything out. A little bit later today, I scheduled it already so you can see it on all of the social media outlets. I'm going to give you a little tour. It's not much of a tour. It's just a big empty space, but I'm super excited of my new home studio. So I will not have to broadcast out of my little cozy sewing room. I'll be able to have my professional setup back up. So, when I came back to Bead Shop in 2016, Janice loves thread, and I too love thread. I'm a thread proponent. I love thread. I love working with thread. And the stringing material that I first picked up to start to string with was something just like this Ceylon. It was a bonded nylon thread. Okay, and that's something that I still string with quite a bit. But when I came back in 2016, Janice had kind of taken stringing to the next level for herself, and she was doing a lot of work with just this simple, flat macrame stitch. Now, back in the day, we did a lot of like knotting, a lot of what we used to call the stringing, advanced stringing techniques. When we had our brick and mortar, we did a lot of, you've seen me do this. This is the silk wrapping technique that I've done. You can find that over at Bead Shop. This is a wrap bracelet. You can see that I've really elevated when I've done this macrame here, right? Whoops, excuse me. There we go. And I have these pieces from Janice. These are also a really good, what I want to say, inspiration piece for this. And you can kind of play around with the different sizes of threads as well. So what I've got here, and you can find it over, Janice just linked it over on YouTube. You can find it if you go over to beadshop.com. You can hit under pages, you can go to skill builders. And if you go to beadshop.com, right on that homepage, you're going to see some learning. You'll see a tab that says learning. We've got a couple of places, and I'm going to do a screenshot so you guys can see it. there are a couple of really great, what we call master classes. One of those I did with Cynthia Thornton. We did a color master class that was super fun. Whenever we do a broadcast with Cynthia, it's so, so fun. It's great. Um, and so, and I want to, Marcia has this up here. This broadcast is a little looser. Um, so what Marcia says, so then is it fine to just credit every creator I've watched, read, or listened to when I want to sell a completed design, especially when I can't remember specifically where I found it? When selling my stuff, I'd like to credit all my teachers, but I've learned for so long that I can't possibly remember everywhere that I've learned something. And, Marcia, that's okay. I'm not saying that you have to go back to your little black book and read out all of the people that you've learned from, but you've taken that, I guess it's kind of like in the words of Karl Lagerfeld. You've heard me say this before. What Karl Lagerfeld said, may he rest, he said, you go and you watch designers and you look at what everybody is doing and you see this, 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 and this. You take it all in, you drink it all in, and then you forget it. And then you do your own thing. Okay, so take those influences, that teaching, that learning, those techniques, and create your own special salad with those. Toss those around, and I think that is also really the key to your success, right? So I want this craft, and Dawn, you say it very well here. This is what's so important about preserving all craft. Unless these techniques are practiced, things will disappear. And it's really true, right? That's why it is my goal in life I call myself an omnicrafter, right? I'm not just a beater or a metalsmith. You can see behind me, I've got a sewing machine and some spinning wheels, and I've got all kinds of stuff here, right? But share that craft. There is room for everyone in the pool, right? I could make a necklace. You could make a necklace. Janice can make a necklace. My friend over in Duluth could make a necklace. We could use all of the same exact materials, but nothing will always turn out exactly the same. So there's room for all of us to play in this great big jewelry making sandbox. Okay, so now I'll get off my jewelry making soapbox and let's get back to this. So this was a piece that you may have seen me do this. We've got these ovals, these faceted ovals, and I'm just in love with this. JP did this a few months ago or last month, or I don't know, time has no meaning for me anymore, so I can't really tell. But she did this same kind of flat macrame technique that I'm going to be sharing with you, except she used this is micro Ceylon that she's used here. Okay, so you can see that size-wise, what that looks like. I'm going to use regular Ceylon here for my piece. It's going to be the same exact technique, but it just depends on which beads you use. I also wanted to show you, this was the one when I did that macrame bezel around the pie disc. This I used Chinese knotting cord. And can you see how the base of this Chinese knotting cord underneath that is 1 millimeter leather, like this, okay? So, and it's again, the exact same stitch, but we're just using different materials. So I really urge you to kind of experiment with what you've got. This is a really great stash dive project. You can drive into your stash, get some of your favorite Czech glass beads, and just go to town. I have this pile of Czech glass beads. You saw this earlier in my broadcast earlier today. And over on Beadshop, we've added a whole bunch of new Czech glass beads. We just launched some yesterday. This one was the one that Janice was so wild about that we used in her piece, and I used it just in that little bracelet that I'm gonna add to the stack here. But lots of really fun things. So this is one that you can really choose your own adventure with, right? What I did was I used 3 different types of beads. I used a melon. This is a 6 millimeter melon. I used our 8 millimeter fire polish that come in mixed strands like this. And what I did was I sorted them by color and did an ombre feel. I mean, look at this ombre. Isn't that just beautiful? Going from light to dark, mirrored on both ends. Those green glass beads just get me. And then I use the 5 millimeter rondelles. Okay, beautiful. So I've made 2 of these, and what I used is the Marina regular Ceylon. But essentially, all you need are 3, I'll just pull these 3 out, 3 strands of beads. And this was the 8 mil, the 5 mil rondelle, and the melon in your preferred colors. And then a spool of regular Ceylon. And again, this is the Marina right here. Okay. So to start something like this, and you can see the anatomy of this bracelet, let me just show you. We've got the little strands here. We've got what we call this fishtail closure, that macrame closure, and this adjusts, your piece adjusts this way. And then you start with your macrame, doing your beads, and then finishing it up here, and then adding that macrame and then the little beads here at the end. So it's super easy, right? Great as gifts. Mother's Day is coming up in May. Really nice, like gifts for your girlfriends or your family members. You could also make this skew more masculine by using some, whatever darker colors or whatever, maybe heavier cords. But this type of bracelet, I think, is really, really super wearable. Okay, so what I did was I started by getting my Ceylon here, and I measured about a yard. This is actually a little bit longer. Let me lift this up so you guys can see a little bit of a bigger detailed view. I'm also going to move this pile of luscious beads over to the side so we're not so distracted, right, like this. Oh, I see our buddy Jill McKay jumping on. Jill's going to be doing her takeover day. Jill, I think it's actually tomorrow, isn't it? Your takeover day. I'm really excited to see all that you do. Talk about a wealth of knowledge, right? That Jill McKay. She's got so many skills, it's not even funny. So I cut a yard of this thread and I folded it in half and I threaded a needle. This is a collapsible eye wire needle like this, right? And then I chose my beads and I strung them on that base thread. Okay, so I just strung them on like this, moved them to the center of this base thread. So, and I like having this needle on the end. Let me grab another needle here so you guys can see that. I like having that needle on the end because it allows you to, that thread just folds right over and it allows you to string on, a variety of nice beads. Again, I've used Czech Glass, but you use whatever kind of floats your boat. So here would be my length. It's a little shorter than what I might have, okay? And then I'll just choose my beads. They don't have to all be the same. They could be different. So you just string these guys on. And I'm going to measure these for you just so you can see how many beads might be on here. But see, here's my little section. And I could just do like a short little section of beads and then have the majority be macrame, right? So however you want to do it. So like here's this little section. And I could macrame around that. Okay. So then what I do is I get my clamps, my clampers, which are right here, and I clamp this to my design board. And so I've clamped one end here and one end here. Okay. And then I start, and I'll show you how I do that. Let me get a couple more clamps out here, rustle around in here. So here's one, and I want to make sure that this is even. Let me get that going up there. There we go. So I'd clamp it here to the box like that, and then I'd bring it over here to this end, and I'd clamp it on this side. Okay, and then I would start in. Okay, so this length, let me show you, because you can always make this a little bit longer, and this is also adjustable, right? So my wrist is 6.5 inches. So I like my bracelets to be about 7 to 7.5 inches. And again, these adjust. Okay, so let me measure and show you. This is before the macrame was on. Maybe this was about 3.5 inches, maybe, or so. I'm going to end up, this is that center point right here. This is about 2.5 inches here, maybe just a touch less. So I'm going to end up with a little under 5 inches worth of beading here, which is about right. But you can adjust, and it's actually really easy. You know, these go super fast, so you can kind of make one, kind of take the adjustments, take the measurements, and then kind of adjust your personal needs from there. And then this is, just as a reminder, this is regular Ceylon right here. But you could also use Chinese knotting cord like I did here. I think I used the 0.5 millimeter for this necklace. So whatever works for you. But I'm using the Chinese knotting cord today. So to start this, if this were going to be in the center, let's say that this is a shorter one. Okay, and let me get this camera down a little bit lower so you can see it. I'm going to miss broadcasting in my little space here, but boy, am I going to be glad to have a big space again with all my stuff laid out. And you see me once in a while, I'm back at the office, but it'll be nice to have a real big space. More metalsmithing content will be coming at you on my own personal channels, and lots of really, we've got so much fun beading content coming up for you guys. Okay, so here I've just cut, I'm going to say about 1.5 yards, and then gone to the center about right here. And then with my left hand, I'm going to make that loop. This is under our skill builders, just this plain flat macrame knot here. And it's under our skill builders on Beadshop. So I take that right hand coming over that thread that's coming over that center cord. I go under the center and up through that loop. And that's created half of that knot. There's no need to tie it on any other way than this. Okay, let me get a little tighter here. Okay, just like that. Now I'm going to do this on the other side. So I went to the left, now I'm going to go to the right, create that loop. This thread comes down, crosses over that tail, under the center strand, and up through that loop. Okay, and tighten. So this has created, it's kind of hard for you to see, but a full square knot, a half to the left, a half to the right. I'm going to go at Kate speed and get a few down on here, and then we're going to switch over. But see how you just continue to go across, back and forth, and then you're going to slide up your bead, bring your strands around, and continue on. Okay. So let me get rid of this and bring this one in. Okay. So here is this guy. So I've done, I did this about 10 minutes before I went on the air. What a surprise. Someday. I don't know. No, I won't. You know what? That's how I do it. I fly by the seat of my pants, and that's how I am. I'm no shame in my beading game, right? So I've done 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 5. See, I knew this looked a little off. I need to thread one more of these melons on here. So I'm going to do that. So I've done 6 melons per side, and then I thought I'd give myself a little center point. And these darn 8mm fire polish. I know I've been talking about them a lot today, but kids, let me just tell you, this one is the apparition strand. They're 8mm. They're a mixed strand. Janice and I have gone a little bit crazy with the mixed strands, right? We got them in the 8mm. There's a bunch of different ones. I don't know if I have any more here. They're all on the website. Oh, I have a few. Let me show you. Here. Let me rustle around. You hear some rustling. This one is the Lagoon mix. Look at this kind of what they call, this is like almost a lime color, but if you're into collecting vintage glass, it skews yellow on the camera, but it's really kind of that Vaseline glass color that you see sometimes in the African trade beads. That's the Lagoon. This one is earth tone, right? Again, it has a lot of greens in it, but it has this dark topaz, which is beautiful. Okay, so these are gorge, right? I love them. And what I did with these was I just ombre'd them, sorted them into color order, so they had a little bit of a visual, some kind of visual unity to it. So Leslie's asking, Kate, does it matter after you've added the bead to start the macrame at any side? So no, what I would do is I usually start the macrame here, like I did on this one, right? And I'll go down, and then if I had to add a bead or something, I could do that here. Then let's say that I wanted to make this a little bit longer on this side, right? So I could turn it around, and I could just tie on a new thread right here and go down. And it would really look seamless. I could just string on some beads using a needle, one at a time, one strand at a time through. Tie on that thread and just macrame down. And it would never be noticed really at all, right? Beautiful. And you could, I'm using all one color here, this Marina, but you could have your base be one color and your macrame a second color. Okay. People are loving the Lagoon. Lagoon. Let me show it to you one more time. It really, I mean, come on. There's something about a blue bead that is just, I don't know, blue glass just sends me over the edge. I just love it. I love it. Okay. So what I've done is I've tried to be consistent with how many little knots I've put between these. So these are mostly bead with just 2 knots, 1 and 2 between each. These have 4 knots in between, so this has a little bit more thread here. And what I'm doing here for this one, I think I'm doing also 2 that show, but it's actually 3. So I'll show you. I'm going to slide up the center. Okay. Now, if you look really closely, it's hard to see on this. Let me show you on this one that I took off. Let's see, I tossed it somewhere. Here we go. Can you see this knot that the one that's right up against the bead? Okay. If I'm going to use my pen as a pointer, do I have my awl anywhere? Emily would be so ashamed of me that I don't have my awl, but I do have a piece of wire here. Okay. So here is this little, like, little crescent that's here, right? So I know when I bring this thread down over the bead and this thread down against the bead, that I'm going to make my loop with this side, the same side that has that little scallop. Can you see there's no scallop on the opposite side? It's right there, right there. Okay, and you'll see me do that for this. But if you put your piece down and then come back to it and you're wondering what side you start on, that's a little tip. And there's another question here. Oh, Nicole's asking, is the base thread single or double? Nicole, it's doubled. And you can see I've doubled that base thread. You can see with this one, I've doubled that base thread over a needle. And I've strung my beads on like so here. And then I've started my macrame, and you can see just that double strand just is hanging out here. And this is going to be that one side of the bracelet coming around like this. Okay, let me grab my water here real quick. I'll let you look at that project there for a second. Let me take a gulp of water here. Okay, water gulped, and let's get back to it. So I'm going to slide this center one up. You can see my scallop is there, so I'm going to bring my right hand thread around to create that loop. I bring my left hand thread over, under the center base, and out through that loop and tighten. So there's one. Okay, now I'm going to go here to the left. So this is my second knot, and I'm going to finish up with a third knot to my right. So the first knot that I tied kind of just sits under that bead hole, and you can't really see the macrame here. So that's why I do one, then two, and then three. Then I'm going to slide up my next one. We can see the scallop is on this side this time. So I'm going to start it here, and I go one knot, two knots. And if that first knot that you tie loosens up, just come in, tighten it up, and then tighten up that second one. And here's my third knot. Okay, tighten. It seems like I've got a little bit of twist in here, so let me untwist this if I can. There we go. That's sitting a little bit better. Slide this guy up. Let's tie this. Again, I'm going to go at Kate speed because I want to finish this. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Now you could use 2 different threads on this if you wanted. I'm going to move this up a little bit. Your center thread, if your beads that you choose only fit on this regular Ceylon that's doubled, but you're like, but I want to use a heavier cord around these to do my macrame. Well, you can make the base Ceylon, right? That's what we carry at Bead Shop. We carry Ceylon in regular, which is what I'm using here. We carry it in fine, and we carry it in micro. And you saw that micro with that one that Janice made. This is the micro right here, nice and tiny and small like that, right? You're going to see that that even though you have the regular Ceylon as the base, that you could, whoops, that's the wrong way, that you could go ahead and knot over the top with a 0.4 millimeter CKC, 0.5 millimeter. You could even go all the way up to an 8. Just depends on, you know, the look that you like. But experiment. like Karl Lagerfeld told us, we learn, we look, we see what people are doing, and then we ingest it, and then we forget all about it, and we create our own work. And that's how you learn, right? Someone's asking here, Nicole is asking about wax linen cord. You know about my deep love for wax linen. You certainly could use wax linen with this technique. It's going to have a little bit of a different hand to it, a little bit of a different feel. Wax linen may be just slightly stiffer, but you can certainly experiment with it. I might mix my wax linen so that maybe the base is regular Ceylon and maybe I've done my macrame with the wax linen, and then I'll do this fishtail closure also with the Ceylon, so it has some slippy movement to it, right? But this portion here, I think would look just fine in wax linen. Okay. Um, so here is my length. Okay. So here's that. This is a good question, and I'm not sure who asked this because you're anonymous with your Facebook user, but you can always grant StreamYard permission so I can see your name. You can do that right at the top of the broadcast. But the question is a good one. Anyone know why some of the Ceylon colors are so much stiffer than the others? Some of them are harder to macrame with. So I think that has to do with a couple of things. It may have to do with the dye that the thread is dyed with. And also, there's a tip, when your Ceylon, when you kind of unfurl your Ceylon from your spool like this, it can be crinkly, right? It can have um, some curl to it. We learned this from our buddy Alice Howe at one of our bead retreats. You get your flat iron like you do with your hair. I have a small one that I bought for just this purpose. And you flat iron this thread. And not only does it straighten your thread out, it also unstiffens it and makes it a little more malleable. So give that a try. If you don't have a flat iron, you can find those little travel ones. I got mine at, I don't know, my CVS or Rite Aid or something. It was very inexpensive, and I use it a lot. So give that a try. Okay. So let's take a look at the amount of beading that I have here. Let's see. This is, and what did I, whoops, sorry about that. Hitting the camera here. Just shy of 5 inches. Okay. Which is just fine here. Okay. And you can see as I bring it around my wrist, I've got plenty of room to make it adjustable and add my little macrame closure there at the end. Okay. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to deal with finishing this end off, and I'm going to do this by I'm going to make 2 knots. I'm going to tie knots. I'm going to tie a knot here at this end, like so. Just this plain end where I started. Just a little overhand knot. And there's no other reason that I do that on this side other than for symmetry. Okay? Then I'll take all 4 of these. This is where I finish macrame. And I'll tie them together. This knot is going to be slightly larger on this side than it was on the opposite side, but I'm not going to worry about it. Okay? This is a fast way. See, there's the knot on this side, there's the knot on this side. Not too much of a difference. If you didn't want to knot it, this one I didn't knot. Can you see? This is just where I started. And here, instead of knotting, I added my GS Hypo Cement here and here. Let it sit and then I use my thread burner. And that's how I'm going to close off this little section too. So you can do either. Okay. So I'm going to cut away. There we go. I want to make sure I'm cutting away the correct ones. Here are the ones that I did the macrame with. I can add just a drop of the GS Hypo if I can find it in my pile of beads. So I'm going to go right there. I'm going to add that little bit of glue, and I'm going to let it. If this were real jewelry making time and not jewelry demo time, I would let this sit overnight. But since this is jewelry demo time and this knot isn't going to come undone anyway, I'm just going to dab that a little bit with my fingers. When you're using glue, you want to make sure that you're working in a well-ventilated area because it does have a little bit of an odor to it. I'm going to come in with my thread burner and just singe this thread away. Again, well-ventilated area. Being very careful because this tip it's a cauterizer, it's hot. Okay. Janice put the collection, everything that I'm using, including the glue, is on the project page right over at beadshop.com. It's called Ivy Garden. I saw this really pretty picture of this ivy climbing up an old stone wall. It had a little bit of blues and stuff in it, so I called it Ivy Garden. Marcia asked, are my closures immovable because I tie the knots too tight? Any tip about that? Yes, excellent question, and one that I'm going to answer right now for you, Marcia. So this is done, right, and ready for my next step. So these little closures right here, just as Marcia observed, they will loosen up over time. You want them to be fairly tight because your threads need to move around. And the more that you wear them, the looser they're going to get. Okay, so I'm going to, just because I've done so many of these, my tension seems about right for this. Okay, but you want to be careful when you're gluing. You only want to glue the top portion of these threads. You don't want that glue to seep down into the base threads here, or you are going to glue this closure into place. Okay, so let's do that closure. So I'm going to come around, and I just know from experience that I need about, I don't know, about this much. And the way that I ascertain this much, how I figure out what this much is I'll make my bracelet into a circle, and I'll make sure I can get my wrist in it. Okay. And then it can tighten just a little from there because you're going to have some tails coming off here. Okay. You also want to make sure, see how I'm holding this? See how this is twisted, right? We don't want that. We want it to be flat. So I'm going to kind of take a visual picture here about how long I need this to be. And then I'm going to kind of flatten these threads out. Flatten these threads out. Oops, it's catching on my clips. And these little clamps are kind of vital for what we're doing here. And I'll show you why. So see, there we go. My threads are now flat. They're not twisted. I'm going to grab them here. Pull this tight, just a little tighter. And see how this is about even as well. Okay, this side and this side kind of line up. You can have a little bit of variance here, but you really want these to line up. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my clamper. I'm going to clamp my threads on that side and my threads on this side leaving the opening that I'm going to macrame over. Okay. So you can see, and then I can check everything. I can go, yeah, that looks pretty even. That looks about right, about as good as it's going to look. And see, one is a little bit looser than the other, but I'm going to fix that after I do the macrame. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. So I'm going to lay these down like this, and I'm going to cut, I don't know, maybe about 18 inches, maybe a little bit more, maybe 24 inches of thread. So I've got enough, so I'm not like trying to tie knots with little tiny ends of threads. And I'm going to start my first knot about here and end my last knot about right there. Okay. So Leslie was asking, we don't need these knots to be super tight, right? And no, we don't want them to be tight. We want to find that center. We do, however, want them to be firm, if that makes sense. Okay, so watch what I do here. Here's my first one, my loop. And I'm going to come over that side under the center and tie it down. There we go. So here's my first knot. And this first knot kind of sets the tone for the rest of what I'm doing here. Okay, so it's nice and tight. And they will loosen up a little bit as you use this. But I haven't like pulled this so tight that there's no movement here. Okay, but it's not so loose that this knot is loosey-goosey and is going to move around a bit. Okay, so now I'm just going to continue, and these little clamps kind of hold everything in place. You can attach yours to your board a little bit differently if you want, but see how these clamps, I'm going to lift this so you can see how this setup is here. There we go. They act almost like little stands to keep everything weighted. They flop over, but that's all right, right? Tell them to sit up. And you don't want this to twist. You just want to keep tying your knots. And see how when I make my knot, let me show you. It's something that I kind of automatically do, is I get this there. I've got my knot all even, and I slide it up so it's even. It's tight, and then I give it an extra little pull. Okay. So you want it to be firm. You want to have some nice tight macrame here, but again, you don't want it to be so, you're not wringing its little neck, right? You're just coming in and making nice, even, tight knots. I'm going to do just a few more because it doesn't need to be that long, but I do want to get this in there. And see that space between the clampers, that's your little area for doing your macrame. And you want to keep those macrame threads underneath. You want to keep them flat, right? You don't want to twist it because that also may impede this knot from sliding, right? If the threads underneath this chain of knots is twisted. Let me do just a couple more, and then we're gonna finish this off. Whoops. See what I mean about having nice long tails here so that I'm not using tiny little bits of thread. Where did it go? There it is. And see that one above it kind of loosened up, so I'm going to tighten it just a little and then tighten the one below. Keep an eye on that knot above, because if this piece kind of rolls around and stuff, that knot that you just put in might have loosened a little bit. So give it just a little tug and then tie that second one just below it. Let me go ahead and tie this, and I'm going to tie one more for good measure, and that'll do it. And I know you're going to say, Kate, how many knots did you tie? I will count them for you, just so you know. So here's this little section right here. Okay, let me get my wire. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 half hitches. So let me do a full 14. Let me do 14. So I've got a full 7 square knots. Notice how I counted the little bumps there? Each of those little bumps is that half hitch. So there we go. Okay. So now what I should have done, I'm going to loosen this one up just a little. See right there, I've loosened that knot. I'm going to apply my glue a couple of places. I'm going to apply the glue right where that loop is going to come in, but I'm trying to avoid the base strand there. And then I'm going to tighten. And I'm also using, you guys, this GS Hypo. What I'm not using is super glue or zap glue. That zap or super glue is super runny, right? Even though the zap isn't quite as runny because it's more of a gel. But it's going to seep down into your threads, and it's going to glue that thread, this knot, onto your base threads. Okay, so you just want to, and so see how I used my toothpick and I just pushed kind of that glue in, but it's all on the surface here. None of it has really gotten down into those base strands. If it does, that's okay. You can kind of move it around a little bit like this. See, there actually is a little bit right there on those base strands. So I'm going to move it away from that. So when this glue dries and sets, it's not going to glue this to that. Okay. So now I'm going to take these clamps away and I'm going to check the sides of my bracelet to make sure that there's no extra thread where it shouldn't be. So before I do that though, let me get rid of these so that we won't be seeing these. Now, if this were real jewelry making time, you guys, and not me demoing to get this over with on a live broadcast, I would let these sit overnight, this glue, so that these don't pop open, okay? But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to singe these with my thread burner, and hopefully that thread burner will cauterize these threads so I won't have anything unravel. So I'm going to kind of isolate that thread, and I'm going to push the button on my thread burner, and I purposefully, see how I have that little, that little nub of thread there. I heat that thread burner and I tamp that nub down, okay? And that nub kind of singes and affixes itself up against these other threads, right? So that's kind of singed there and not going anywhere. I'm going to do the same thing here, and I do it. See how here's the little scallop of that knot, okay? I do this on the underside of that scallop, okay? So that when I tamp that knot down, that little bit of thread, it kind of sits right underneath that scallop. Okay, so I flipped it over from, I did it on the other side for that one. This one I flipped it over. So I'm going to come in, cauterize, and see, I've got that nub, that little thread nub right there. Heat your thread burner very carefully. Tap it down, and I push it in. Let me tap it. It needs just like a hair more tapping. There we go. And tap it in there. And then these are cauterized. They're not going anywhere, right? I could even come back now with my glue, which has not had the cap put back on it. Good job, me. Let me just get this here. And right underneath where I cauterized, I can add a touch of glue to that nub. Okay, that's it. Okay, so let me put the lid back on here. Okay, so now that little section is complete. Okay, so here I'm gonna see how these aren't completely even, right? There's a little bit of extra space. So I'm just gonna pull these threads down evenly. And I'm also gonna make sure this glue has long dried over there in that little problem area. So I make sure that everything is even like this. Okay, so there we have it. So now I'm just going to put my little beads on the end here, right? On this one end, it's easy because I've got my needle on. So I'm just going to slide this on. And this is also where you can size it a little bit, right? I can open it up and I can make sure it goes on my wrist, which it does like this. And I'm going to have a little bit of tail here, so I'm going to have room. So I'm going to put this bead on the end, and I'm going to kind of mark it with my finger and bring it through and tie the knot. Okay. I could add that bit of glue on the end there, but it really won't unravel. I'm going to come in and I'm going to thread burn right up to that knot, leave that little bit of a tail, and then tamp that tail down with the heated thread burner. So here's that. Let me thread burn here. Push the button of your thread burner to heat it. Slice those off. Now you can see there's that little thread nub. Heat the thread burner. Tamp it down to cauterize that end. There we go. Perfect. Now on this side, I have two ends, right? That's the side that didn't have the needle. So I'm going to grab the needle from my previous thread, which is here. If the hole or if the eye of the needle has kind of closed up, use something. In this case, I'm going to use that toothpick to kind of open that eye back up like this. And sometimes, let me get that melon. Sometimes I can get one thread through here, but the second thread, it's really hard to get through. So I'll use my needle. Slide that on, trying not to, you know, split the thread that's already going through the melon. And slide that through. There we go. Then I want to make this tail. I want to tie the knot at about the same spot as my other one. So these will be about the same length. Looks like it needs to go about right there. Just a little overhand knot. Slide that down, check it. That looks about the same. Make sure it's nice and even. Tighten that up. Add a little touch of glue. Again, GS Hypo, not super glue, because that super glue will run. It'll run down the thread and it will stiffen. This GS kind of melds with the nylon thread and makes a nice flexible closure. Cauterize that thread away. There's that nub. Turn on the thread burner. Tamp it down very carefully in a well-ventilated spot. And there it is. It's closed. It's not going anywhere. Okay, so what we've got is our nice little slider here. This actually should be on this side. There we go. Like that. And you can just kind of go back and forth with it to make sure that, you know, everything is loose enough. There we go. Okay, so let's get all three of these in here and let's take a look and see how they look here. Give me just 1 second. I want to write this knot here. Just, there we go. So you can see we've got our stack. This got flipped. Let me unflip it. There we go. So we've got this one, and this one. Right? There we go. Okay. And the reason, so that's a good question. So I'm going to look at a couple of the questions here. I glue before burning. What I do is I put the glue where I want it to go. I'll let it sit. Then I'll cauterize it. You could come back in and glue a little bit, but after you cauterize, what I find is after you thread burn that thread, it's kind of melty, right? So that the glue might not seep into the thread as well. So that's why I do it. Okay. Jacqueline says she needs me a thread burner. We have them right on beadshop.com. And today is a great day to do it because let me show you guys. If you got our newsletter today, or even if you didn't, in our newsletter, we had a coupon for all y'all. And you can take 20% off store-wide right on beadshop.com. You use coupon code takeover20 at checkout. It'll knock 20% off your cart. And that is valid today, Wednesday, March 23rd, 2022, until midnight Pacific time. Okay. So that's a little extra special thing there for the Great Bead Extravaganza. I love the way these look, right? And they stack. Let me put these on. They just stack so nicely. So if you're making a gift for someone, as I said, get 3 strands of the Czech Glass, and you can mix them and match them to go on your wrist, right? But I'm not going to tighten these up, but you can see just really, whoops, I was a little high there. They really look great. Okay. So you guys can find all of this is the lead up, the takeover days, the lead up to our spring fling for the Great Bead Extravaganza. Our Friday night preview is Friday, April 8th, and then the dates of all of the presentations from the presenters are April 9th and 10th. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have good times there. We also, let me get to your comments over here in case there's any other comments here that we've got. Great, it's looking good. Good, good, good. Good, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Great, great, great. Let me put me up on the screen here. Here I am. So I will be back, you guys, for one more broadcast. It's actually in like 15 minutes. I didn't know this would go quite as long as it did, but it did. It was kind of in depth. I was having so much fun doing this for you. So you'll see I've scheduled the broadcast from about 15 minutes from now, about 3 p.m. Pacific. I'm going to take you out to my new and empty studio. It's not going to be that exciting, but I want to share. We also have in the Great Bead Extravaganza group, we have a thread going. It's pinned to the top, so you'll see it there. It's our giveaway thread today. Go ahead and comment after you followed all of our social medias, or if you have, you can just comment with your favorite beadshop.com project. Speaking of projects, you can find this one called Ivy Garden right on beadshop.com, and you can find all of the beads and everything there that you're going to need for it. Okay, so I will see you all shortly. Hopefully, hopefully I'll be able to get the broadcast working out there, but I will see you guys in a little bit. Thank you, as always, for joining me, and I hope you're enjoying this Great Bead Extravaganza Takeover Day. Thanks so much, everybody. Talk to you soon.